the entire component in again from scratch, right? So this was what we had in the last class, right? So what is happening? Okay, it's recording now. All right. So you guys can still see my screen. So now this is it. This was what we had in the last class. And from there, we were able to show that this was working as it should, right? So we had, oh, no. Some things are still not there. Okay, yes. This. Okay, so this is exactly what we had. We can change the color, everything is working, right? This was what we had. So, but then looking at what we were talking about that day, from last week rather, we had that we wanted to follow the structure, right? Introduce you guys to React, get you to understand what React is and what you can do with it. And then that way we built this to show you what you can do with React, the power of React and the dynamics of what you can build using React as a framework. So that was the first thing we did. Then after that, we talked about component and props, right? But we didn't really talk much about it. I only spoke about it last week, and then we went to state management, but we didn't do everything about state management. We used some of it. We created the counter app, right, that day on the core. So we skipped this part, but went to this because it was needed for what we wanted to build. And then after that, I showed you guys how to build your code from scratch. Let's say you have a problem to solve. How do you go from the problem to the solution? And how you can begin to piece all of everything you need to solve that problem. That was very important. So I showed you guys how you can go about it. And I mentioned that on the call. And um, those were like the things we did. And then from the problem of we trying to build something like this, we were able to think of everything we needed, the buttons, the event handlers, thought of the logic, and we were able to bring the solution together. That's the first thing we did. Now, after doing that, that's not all, right? That's just the first thing we did. But now we want to now try our hands on the components, because components are like the lifeline of React. That is exactly why we are using a framework like React, a library like React. Without the ability to create components, that's reusable component, you will not be able to create something like that. So what was the first thing we did this evening? I wanted you guys to understand component, and I said that component basically means it's just a function. So before I started with that, I gave you an instance of component. I said what we mean by component basically is all of this. I said the React component is a function or a class, right? A component can be reused multiple times. Now, these are properties of a component, right? So when we talk about components, say this is a component now, but then let me delete this, right? And then just explain with this. Now, when we talk about a component is basically just a function. That's the first thing you need to know. So I can give a function and a name like this. So if I have something like this is a component, but this is not a complete component. It's just a component, partially, right? So a component, first of all, is a function or a class. But in this case, we are creating a functional component, right? Are we clear on that? So a component is just a function, a JavaScript function in this case is a component. Now, a component can be reused multiple times. That's another property of component. Now, we will see how that works, right? Like when we are done with this component, we will see how you can use it and how you can show different things. So a component can be reused multiple times. A component returns a markup. So now that means for this to be a complete component, it has to return something, right? It has to return something from here. Right. So in this case, now we can say it's a markup, meaning that it has to return, let's say H1, for instance, like this, right? And a component must begin with a capital letter. So that means if I have something like this, it's not a component. Nope. It has to begin with a capital letter. And those are like the key properties of a component. For now, that's what you need to know about component. There are more things to know about it, but for now, if you understand these 4 things about component, when you are creating your component, you will not make a mistake of naming it lowercase like this. You know that no, this is not a component. It's already a problem. So you have to make sure that your component starts with a capital letter. It must return a markup, no matter how small or how big. It can be a div in this case, it can be an H1, it can be a button, but it must return something. Do you get it now? A markup. And it can be reused multiple times. And a component is just a function or a class. So now, This is just a component. What you see here is just a component. Do you get it now? That's that. But for me to be able to use my component in other places, what I need to do is to export the component like this, then copy the name of this component like this, and export it as default. Now, you can decide to export as default or not. It will still work in this case. But when you're exporting it like this, you always by default. That's why it's called default. You export by default as default. Did you get it now? But we will still see other ways of exporting without using default by just doing something like export, something like this, and it still works. Did you get it now? But we are going to be using the default export for a start. I don't know if that makes sense to any of us. Is it clear, please? Are you guys following? Please give a reaction. Following. So now this is a component, as simple as it is now. Now let's try using this component from the app.js. You know, the app.js is what we see on the screen like this. This is everything now. Everything we see here is in the app.js, right? Now let's try adding that component we created, this name component, in app.js now to see if it will show. So let's say I want to put it after this invite plus react. Let me create it as a name component. I'll just do something like this, component, like this. Or I create it like the normal, the way I will create an H1 or a div. I'll just call name component, and then I will import it at the top, like import name component from component slash this, because I created a component folder here. I forgot to mention that I created a component folder because it's like the convention, right? So when you're doing something like that, what you want to do is, let me delete all of this, right? And start this name so that you can understand it. So I'll clear all of this. Okay, so I probably should not have done that, but I've done it already, so fine. So I'll remove this and I'll remove this, right? So now what I want to do if I want to create a component, and if you want to do the same, is inside your source folder that you have created for your React app, you right click on it or you create a folder inside of your source, call it components like this. Now inside your components, that's where you can create all your components. It's not compulsory, but it's a convention, and it makes you look like someone that understands what you are doing, right? You are trying to make your code as modular as possible. So inside the components folder that I create, I will create a file called name components, just like I have now, JSX in this case. Now, we've talked about the properties of a component. A component is a function or a class, right? That's the first thing. You say it must what? It can be reused multiple times. Yes. A component, it must start with a component, it must start with a capital letter. And what's the first one? Remember the fourth one? I don't think I can remember the fourth one. What was the first thing we said about components just now? It must return a markup. Yes.
It's reusable.
Yeah, I've said reusable. It can be reused multiple times.
Oh.
Yeah. So those are the four, like for now, those are the four things that I want us to put in mind. So now let's try creating the component again.
I'm going to be exporting it.
Yeah, exporting is not compulsory, but that depends on how you want to use it. That's why I'm not adding it to it.
I hope no one has slept home. Tunji, mark attendance. I said, why are you calling me? Because you're the only one I don't trust. Watching now, let us. But actually, it's the one I don't trust the most. It's one that I don't sleep off. What's that like?
Sorry, can you guys hear me? Can still hear me, right?
Yes.
Sorry for the noise. I just came off now. So now the idea is I have this H1 at this point, right? So let's see. So we have this, right? And this is my component. So now I can decide to export this, right? Export the default name component like this, right? So now this is my component again. So now I can go back to this place and import my component here by using it inside of this place. Now, don't forget that we already decided that we can use our component multiple times, right? So because I can use my component multiple times, all I need to do is just inside here, I could just add it here, and then I will import it at the top. Now, importing it at the top is something that is done for you normally. It's like if you're using VS Code, it will automatically import it for you as long as you have exported it at this point. So now let's try it out. If I do something like this, name component, you can see that it's giving me the answer, right? I'll just click on it and close the tag, just like normal HTML tag. Now, once I do it like that, and I go and check my browser, you will see that I can see my name is Mayowa, right? That's what I see here. Now, that means my component has been exported. I can now use it multiple times. If I duplicate it, I see it again. If I duplicate it again, I'll see it again. Do you see it now? So that means I can do it, but let me just leave it at just one component. So I can reuse it multiple times just by calling the name. But that's not the beautiful thing. We'll still come back when we are passing prop and you will see how we can do that. But now let's try doing something else now. Let's remove all the other things inside of this function and move them to a prop. So what do I want to do? I want this to be his own component, this guy to be his own component rather, and this one to be his own component. So that means this button for increasing the counter, I want to move it to a component. I want to remove this button to change color into his own component too. So now let's start with the counter button. So for the counter button, what we'll do is inside the component folder that we created, I'll create a new file and call it counter.gsx. Now, what do I do first? It's a function, right? I'll just create a function and call it any name. I'll call it counter in this case. I'll return something. Now, what am I returning? Remember that I already have it inside my app.gsx. And what is the counter? Is this button, right? This is the button that change. This is the button for the counter, right? This button that changes the value. So I'll just remove the button completely from here and move it into the counter. That's the first thing I will do. But you can see that there are errors here. So the first error is this one. So that means I will go and export first. Do you guess now? So now once I export it before, you can see that I'm still seeing error here and here. And why am I getting errors here? It's simply because I've not done something. Now if you over on this error, you will see undo click button is not defined. So what do I need to go and do? I need to go and copy this one that is here, right? This function here, cut it again. Now I'm trying to move everything to a component. Remember, I'm moving it out. So that means I can just remove what is meant for this button and move it into this place. Now remember what else is meant for this button that is inside of this place, this button value. Do you get now? I will cut it out again and I'll move it into this place. So by the time I do all of this, I'll just import this one. By the time I do this now, what do I have? You can see that I have this function for undo the click button, which is here. I have everything, so there's no error anymore. So that means I've converted this button that I have here before, this one, this button here, this is the 4 that was increasing anytime I click it, into its own component. Now, after I move it to a component, and then I will save this file. You can see I've not saved it here. I will save app.gsx. If I save it, you can see that it's no longer there because I've removed it and moved it to a component. Now, for it to be displayed again, I need to use the component inside the app.gsx file, but we'll do that very soon. So now let's move this color change button into its own component. Now, how do we do that? The same way we move counter to its own component, we move everything about color change to its own component. And what do we need for color change? We need this array, first of all, right? Because we are using it for the color change. We need this function because that is what is changing the colors. And we need this button that is changing, that we will click to change the colors. So now let's create a component for them. So I'll create a component called color change or color switch.gsx, right? And so I'll go back to app and remove all of them one by one. I'll first remove this array of colors, right? Because that's the first thing, that's the color, that's what we're using for color. But before that, I need to create a component. Create a component called color switcher. I'll just call it switcher for instance. And then return something, right? I want to return a markup. So what am I returning? But before I return something, I first want to, okay, first of all, this is what I will do. Let me remove the button that is actually making the change. I'll cut the button out of here, go to my color switch, paste it inside, right? I will export my components first, right? Like this. And the next thing, I'll go to app because I know that this function too, I need it. I will cut the function out of it. I'll move it into this place. I'll put the function. Don't forget the function is not in the function is where is outside of return, oh, right? So the same place it is in this app.jsx is the same place I'm going to add it in my component. So the same way it is here that I have it before return is the same way I will add it before return here. So I'll paste it here, then I'll remove it. Now, once I paste it here, you can see that it's there, no problem. But then I still have this array of colors. And you can see the array of colors comes before return. So the same way it is inside of app.jx, the same way I will put it inside my component. So I'll remove this, I'll cut it out, right? Once I cut it, I'll put it inside here too, like this, and then I'll save it. I can see that there's no error again. So it means that I've successfully converted it also to a component. And then I'll now put it here, and then I'll save. So now you can see that now I don't have any of those things inside here. If I go and check my browser, you can see that I don't have them, no button for any of the two. But then if I refresh my page, I still don't have it. So how do I bring them back? The same way I brought this name here, component, in the same way I will bring them back. So how do I do it now? Right? Hope you guys are following, please. Okay. So now
Yes,
how do
boss.
I Okay, so how do I bring it inside now? So the question is, how do I bring the component? Now, what is the component? Let me go back to the component. Let me start with the counter component. What's the name of the component I want to bring? Counter, right? So I'll go back to my app.jx and I will do something like this. Just like I used to create button or h1 or input field or whatever. I'll just create the name as counter. The same name. You can see that VS Code is giving me. I'll just click on it. It will import it for me automatically. So you see it here. Now, I will just import it like this. Once I import it like this, and go and check my browser, you can see that I have the button there. And if I click it, it's still working like before. Because I moved the entire logic and the entire thing, the button, the logic, the element, the function, everything that makes this thing work, I move it into their own component. So I can reuse it multiple times. If I duplicate it again, see, I have another button that does the same thing. I can duplicate it many times, and all of them, you can see that they have these different numbers. Do you see it? Do you see? So they can work on their own individually. Do you get the point now? So they are not tied to each other. That's the beautiful thing. If I refresh again, you can see all of them are default. But I can move one, move another one, and you can see that they are working on their own independently. Do you get now? So this is one of the beautiful thing about components. Who is confused at this point? Let me explain again. Is it clear to everybody before I proceed?
Yes, sir.
All right. So now that is just the beautiful thing about component. I can use it, like I said, it's a function, right? So being a function, we use it as a function. I can see we can use it multiple times here too, which is just perfect. And now you can see we can do it multiple times, we use it multiple times, and then all of them can work on their own. Yeah, Abidoye, go ahead.
What I want to ask. So, assuming we are having a project now,
Yeah.
can we create everything inside the app, this thing first, like every component that we are going to use? Then maybe when we are done, we can now rearrange it the way you are doing it now. Or the better way to do is to create your components, then link it, then you can operate from each section.
So any of the two, right, is good. But the first one is not a good approach. That's creating everything in the app first. Depending on what you're trying to build. When I started learning this, right, what I used to do is I'll first map out what I want to create. Let's say, for instance, now I know I want to build this, right? And okay, because I want to build this, I know I want a button that will do this for me. So I can create that button as a component from beginning of my project. But if I do not know what I want to create, right, I can create everything in one place first. Now, once I have an idea that, okay, this is how I want to structure it, I can then begin to break it into components so that I can have I can now extend the functionality of my app. Do you get? Now, creating a component doesn't mean your app is tied to something, right? And doesn't mean your app has to follow a particular thing. So that's why you're breaking it to components so that it can be flexible and dynamic enough for you to move around. So before you create your application, if you have like a design, right, or like a Figma design or something to work with, You get that way it is easier for you to know what is a component and what is not a component. Say for instance, you have a design, and in that design, you need to have a nav bar, you need to have a button. Do you get? So that way you can move those ones into a component. Does that make sense, please? Nabido. All right.
Yes.
Okay. All right now. Okay. So now let's proceed then. So what I'm going to do in this case, after creating all of this as components, right? Now you can see that it's back to just one. Now let's now add or bring in the color switch component too. So how do I do it? Just the same way I did this counter. What's the name of the color switch first of all? We call it color switcher here, right? So I'll copy the name, come here, create it like my normal HTML file. I will import it from this place. And once I import it, I'll just have color switcher from this. Now, once I do that, you can see that I have the color switcher here. But then I want to break it down. So I'll move the counter to the top so that they can be on different lines. So if I click on this, you see that it's still working because I move both the functionality, which is this, and the element, which is this. Does it make sense, please? So you can see how easy it is to just move it inside and use it. And the same way I use this button multiple times too. I can use this one multiple times. I'll just put it inside like this. And you can see I can change color and everything is changing. Do you see it? Do you see it? So they are working independently of each other. So that makes sense, right? So now that is just the component is in React. Like that's just what component does. But this does a simple component. It's not extended yet. Now the last thing we're going to do today, before I release you guys, because I feel like I've already covered what I want to before we go for the next things, right?
Sorry. No.
Yeah, I can hear you.
So as we have those components now, we can have them at any part of the, as in we can call them at any part of the site. Maybe on the left side, we can or the left bar or nav bar or
exactly.
the footer.
You are getting it. You can call it anyway. I can create a component here and call it footer, for instance. Right? And what will I do? I'll just create a function, call it footer like this. Return a markup inside. Remember, you have to return something. I call it H1. This is the footer.
You have TSS, not JSS.
Oh, sorry. Sorry. I'm kind of used to TSX now. So just call it default footer, right? Like this. So if I run this now, I go to add it into my footer now, right? I'll just call it footer like this. I'll import it. And if I come to my app, what do I see? This is the footer. Do you see it now? Do you get? So that's it's just the same thing. You having that as a component means you can import it anywhere. So your app is free to move things anyhow you want. But now let's see the last thing for today, for this night, right? Before we round up this class. The first thing we need to do, or that I want us to do now, right, is to have this thing called props. Now, remember when I created this one, this Vites plus React, this name.react, and this footer, they are all text, right? They are all text. And the interesting thing about them is you can see that all of them is H1. The footer is what? Is H1, right? And the name component is what? H1. So if I have the same component like this, I can make them reusable. Do you get it now? But do you get what I'm saying? You guys understand? You can see that they are so now instead of having to create it multiple times like this, why not create just one component to undo H1? Right? So I'll just make sure that whatever text is inside is going to be dynamic. And that is what we refer to as props. Understanding props and passing data between components. Now let's see what I mean. Let me show you an example. Now in this name component now, what if I do something? What if I want the name here to always change based on whatever the user passes in? So what I'm going to do is I'll pass in text like this, but I won't pass it like normal text. I'll create a curly bracket passing text like this, right? I'll now replace this name here with the text, but I will wrap it in what? Curly brackets.
So what about the name?
Which name?
Your name that is there.
Exactly. Now, what do I do in the name? Now, let me show you what will happen. So, what will now happen now is that you know that there's no name anywhere now. If I go here now to the browser, before my name was there, but you see that there's no name anymore. I want to do it in such a way that I can put my name anywhere I want to use it. Here, I can put my name. So, what I will do is in this place now, I'll now put text. You can see text here. That's the text that is coming from here to be here. I'll now put my name is Mayowa. If I do that, it comes back. So that way it's easy for me to, it's flexible enough, right? So let's say if I create this one, if I create another duplicate, I can change this to my name is Samuel. Do you get now? I can change this next one to my name is Blessed. Do you see the flexibility now? Instead of, when I duplicated it the other time, I just saw Mayowa. Do you get it?
Yeah.
So this is the beauty of it.
Yeah.
So now I can duplicate it anyhow. Now, since we now know that I can do the same thing I can duplicate it like this, why not just use the same component for this one and this one? Because all of them are H1, right? So now, instead of H1 here, I'll change it to name component, like this. And I'll say write plus react, like this. So if I do that and go back, you see that I still have the same thing. Do you see it? So now that means I can remove this one. I can remove this other too. Do you get it? That means like even this footer that is here, I can change it from H1 to what? To name component, like this.
Yeah.
And then now instead of this one, I'll just say text equal to what? Like this. And if I do like this and I go back, you see I still see the same thing. So nothing changes. Do you see the beautiful thing about this now?
Yeah.
Unless you want to.
Sorry, just hold on, please. All right, so please, is that clear enough? Like, is that very clear? The way I pass the prompt is very, very clear, right? Like, extremely clear. So now you can see the way you can make your component dynamic. And you can see that I'm using it in multiple places. So I created one component in name component, right? And you can see how many places I'm using it. I'm also using it in footer component. So now that means I'm passing data to multiple places. So that means I've covered these two things. So what I did here, in name component, this is called a prop. See this thing I did here? This is what we call a prop. You get now? And what I did in footer here is what you call passing data between components. Actually, this is not what you mean by passing data, but then it means reusing components. And you can call it nested component or child component. Do you get it now? Now, the part of passing data between prop is still similar to what I did here. I'm passing data from here, from app here, right, to my name component by using what? A prop. Please, does that make sense to you guys? Is it clear enough?
Yeah.
Who's confused here, please? Okay, so I mean nobody's confused. That's nice. I'm happy to see that. So now that is basically what we refer to as component. Now you can see how we just made our app look smaller, right? Let me remove this one and a bit cleaner, right? The app is clean now. The only thing you have is what you need. You can see now. You can begin to see that your app looks like component, like actual component, like just a standard code. So if someone sees this now, be like, oh wow, this is a component, name component. Okay. So let's say if I want to style the name components now, and I want to just add like a class name to it and say text green, for instance. Am I using Tailwind? I'm not sure I'm using Tailwind. So it won't work. Okay, so let's say I want to style it and say something like this: background Navajo white, like this, right? You can see it affects the three of them at once. So that's the beautiful thing about using component. Imagine if I did not do it that way. They are not the same thing. That means I will first style this one. I'll come back to look for this one, style it. I'll come back, look for this one, style it. So that doesn't make sense that way, right? But then because I'm using the same component for all of them, once I style it in one place like this, it's going to affect all of them. So please, do we get it? Is it clear to you guys, please? Do you understand? So the whole components system. I know this is just a basic component though. Like we are supposed to be able to create parent and child component systems, right? Like, but this gives you an idea of what I mean already. Now look at the way I use the name component in footer component. Do you see it now? So this is similar to a parent and child component because this is a parent component in this case. This is the child. And the child is also a component because this is a component too, right? So if I go to my footer, my app.jsx, you can see that I'm using the footer, but the footer is using another component. So in this case now, you can see we are creating a parent-child component system. You see how simple it is. See that it's not difficult at all. Do you get it? So that's basically what we refer to as components. So whenever you see component and you hear things like components, passing of props, when you hear things like props or passing props or prop passing, prop nesting, all of those things, it's just basically what you've seen here. You have a function that takes in an argument, and that argument in React or in libraries like React for creating components is just an argument, but you call them props in this case. And then you can see the way I created the props here. I just pass in the value of the prop so that it can be dynamic enough for me to use. And so that wherever I want to use it, I just know that I can pass different props to it. So my app can be dynamic. And that's exactly what you see happening here. This is a very simple example, right? But one thing to also know is that you can reduce this thing if there's no child inside. Like if you're not passing anything inside the components, you can reduce it like this. It's still the same thing. You can reduce it like this. It's still the same thing. Do you get now? So that means if I create something like this and I create something, you see that this is a name component. This is also a name component. But if I go to the browser and I check, both of them is still working well. Do you see it now? So that's basically what we are supposed to do. So that's basically what component is all about. So any questions from here before we call it a night?
Okay, I think I'm more familiar with that other style of not adding the other closing tag.
Yeah, so it's the same thing actually. The same
Okay,
thing. So if I do like, yeah,
this way.
the only reason
No.
why you are doing it because there's nothing inside the component. Like you're not adding anything inside as children.
It's
So but
just
when we come
close.
to adding exactly, so you just close it. But it's still the same thing though. But if you are creating props with children, then we can use something like this. But because this component does not take any child, there's no children prop passed to it, so it can work like this.
So
You
the
get it now?
props now. Yeah. The props now.
Yeah.
Can you-
Yeah,
Is
I can
he
hear you.
also like passing what do they call it in JavaScript? Passing
Parameters.
parameters into functions or this thing.
Yeah, basically that's what it is. So like I was saying that time, this is just a parameter to a function. But in things like JavaScript, you call them props. In React rather, you call it props because you are not calling this a function anymore. You are calling it a component. So because you are calling the component, you are calling this a prop. But a prop is just an argument. It's just an argument, it's just a parameter rather that you create for a function that requires an argument to be passed to it. Do you get?
Okay.
So that's basically what it is. So any question or any other question?
So is it only text that we can pass into it?
No, you can pass any other thing. You can pass it. You can pass another component into itself. It just depends. Just because for this case now, it's just text we are using. You can pass any other thing. You can pass images, but depends on how you want to interpret it. So let's say, for instance, now I want to Let me close this with another div. Let's do this. Let's say I want to return an image, right? Image source, right? Like this. And I want the image source to be coming from here. I'll just do something like this. Image source, like this. So if I go to my component, my way I'm using it, I can pass in image source also. Image source in this case is still another string, right? It can be a string, blah 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 blah, whatever. So let's say I get an image, and let me pick an image from here. Let me pick an image, copy. Okay, this is not an image. This is not an image. Let me copy an image. Let me find an image somewhere here. Copy image address, right? Let me paste that image address here, and so you see what I'm saying. So if I paste that image address here, I'll go to my browser. Okay, where is my component? So in this case, now I'm supposed to show this guy. Now if I go back here and go to my browser, I'm supposed to show this. Why is it not showing the component? Wait, am I passing the right? Yeah, no. This is. Let me try this link to see if it's working. Let me try this link first. Yeah, so it's supposed to show this. So that's what is expected to show.
Do we need to import it on the app before you can use it here?
Yes, now I imported it here now. See it. There's name component.
I mean the image part.
No. The reason why you have it inside there is so that you don't need to import it. The only thing you just need to do is you are passing it, you are accepting it as a prop, right?
Okay.
That's what you're accepting.
Inside the name component.
Accepting it there because you're accepting it as I'm using source instead of image source. Exactly. So you can see because I'm not using the right name, that's why it was not working.
Okay.
So I need to use image source here. So if I come back here, this was what I had before, source like this. So I just change it to image source. And you can see that it's showing it now.
Okay.
Get it now. So you can pass anything inside of it. It doesn't matter. It's just that you must make provision for that thing within the component itself. So that wherever you're now using it, you know that if I pass this into the component, I will get this. If I pass this into the component, I will get this. Do you get it? In this case, now I know that this text is just for this text. It's just for displaying text. This image here is for you to show an image. Do you get it? So I can create multiple things depending on whatever I want to accept. And you can see that, funny enough, I'm not passing any image to this one, and it's still working. Do you see? Do you get it now? So it just depends. Exactly. So it depends on what you want to pass to it, right? And now you have structured your components. In this case, now I structured the component to take in a text and an image. I can create another component for buttons that is to only show buttons. I can create another component for images alone. I can create an image in component for avatars. I can create a component for input fields.
So if you're having all those ones now, are they not supposed to be be an object, maybe like inside an object?
Exactly, that's my point. So you can take in anything. So if I'm passing it as an object, it's still going to be a prop though, even if it's an object. It needs to be passed as a prop like this. This looks like an object too now, doesn't it?
Yes, you have more than.
So it's just a prop, yeah. So even if you pass it as a prop, an object, a child, it's still a prop. The only time you now make them different is the element that is going to take it. Like I said, this is an image, right? But you can see that it's here. This is a text. You can see that it's here also. Do you get it now? So everything has to be exactly defined where you want to use it. So, but the idea is that you are taking props, first of all. That's the first thing. So you are passing in a prop, but within that prop, whatever you want to pass into that prop, you have to make use of it, or you will want to make use of it within your component itself. There are still no examples to try out, right? But this is just a sample. It's like a very simple understanding of it. And a very simple example of what we are talking about.
Okay.
Do you get it? So this is how it is. So I can create another component and call it like button, for instance, .gsx. So if I create a button component called button, I'll create let me call button or custom button like this. And inside this custom button, I can pass a prop. Let's call it button text, right? And let's say text and type. right? And in this case now, well, let me just pass type. Let me pass in text, and what again do we need? Basically, the button might not be the real tough stuff I need, but then the point is, if I pass in a text now, I know that whatever I pass into it, or let me say placeholder, you get now. Oh no, placeholder, no placeholder for button. I'm thinking of input field. Let me just create it as button, right, and text, and then if I pass in the text like
How
this,
about color? Okay.
yeah, color. You know we are not using, so the color has to be a style, which is possible. Sure, we can call it background or color, something like that. So if we do that, we can just call it button like this, right? Yeah, so we can call it a button like this, and say the text will be inside here, right? That's the text of the button, and then the style will be the color that we want to use. So it's going to be color, and color is going to be color like this. That's the color coming from here. That will be the color that is here. So we can have what again? We can have the background and call it background PG. As the background is this one coming from here. Now we'll just export it now. And then if I go to my app.jsx now, I'll just I can call the custom button. Remember the name is custom button, right? I'll just see it here. I'll just import it. By the time I do that, I can pass in the text. Text is going to be what? I can create under text, call it button 2, and style it. And call it color is what? Color is green. And call this one, and leave this one. We'll not call this one color, give it background, BG, because it's BG that I used here, right? So I'm going to put BG here. This one is going to be blue. And this one is button 3. Now you can see these 3 buttons. Let's go and see what we have here. You can see button 1, button 2, button 3. Different colors. You get now. So it just depends. You can create multiple like different things as much as you want. But the idea is that you are making provision for them. You can see these are 3 buttons now with one component, right? Just one component. But I made the component dynamic enough such that you can take in background color, text, whatever. Do you get now? So I can call this one, instead of I can call this one submit, for instance, and it will change. And if I create another one, I'll call it cancel. And I call this one orange or tomato. It's going to be cancel. And I call this one green, for instance. Submit, cancel. You get now. I can now give a color of white to this one self, in fact. And then I have this. Do you see? So you can just do whatever you want with it. This case, and everything will just work well.
Wow.
You get now. So that's the idea. So components allow you to make these dynamic things happen within your code. Does that make sense? Please.
Yeah, yes. Very
All right. So that's basically what the component is. So any question before I round up for tonight? I believe there's no question, right?
No question. You believe there's no question? You don't want me to ask question?
No, because I know that the question you will ask will not be for this class.
You believe there's no question? Okay,
Yeah,
there's
I'm
no
going to
question.
ask question. Because if you ask any question regarding this ahead, I believe you've answered it. I'll just say something I've explained before. But if you still have question, you can ask it. But I know that the question will not be for this question.
Okay.
Am I right?
Let me keep it for the next class then.
Exactly, because it's going to be for the next class. Something much more advanced.
Well,
Yeah.
I thought what half plus we should have cost.
Say?
What half plus are we plus should have cost.
So what's the pro and cons of this? The component. So honestly, the thing is, the good thing about components is the more you create it, the more you feel like creating it, and then you can over create it. That's the cons there. So like what Abido is asking now, right? The way I made this button now, I can decide to over create this button. It's possible. I can overdo it, right? And I don't want to. So you need to know the right time to stop, like over dynamically styling or dynamically passing props to your components. That's just the downside to it. Now, the way I created buttons now,
you don't need to add everything to particular.
exactly. You don't need to add everything to the components. Yeah, as much as possible. Just add the most important things and leave it. If you need another one, you can create another one, but don't make it too dynamic that it now become confusing to manage. So that because if other people are working on it, it becomes confusing to them. It's you that even you that create it after some time, you don't even understand what you are doing with it again. So that's the downside.
Hmm.
Do you get now? So that's so now if you have like if you try this out now, you can see that these are buttons, different colors. So imagine me having this custom button in my app now. I can create just this one button, easy to create all the buttons in my application. It's fine enough. I can add other things like on click and last to it. I can add other things like when you click, what happens, right? All of those things, and then I'll put on click and I'll pass in custom click like this. Now, when you click on this one, for instance, I can say custom click is got to alert click, right? And if I click on it, you can see, oh, sorry, I have to do it like this. And if I click on it, for instance, if I click on this cancel now, what do I get? Click button. Or if I click on the other ones, nothing happen. But because I pass it to this one, you see that something is happening. Do you get the whole stuff now, right? So you're free to pass in anything to it, but don't make it too crazy. Right. So Abido, does this answer your question? Like, does it fully answer your question?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So I'm happy that answers your question. So yeah. So any other thing before we wrap it up for today?
Let me scan through the codes before you leave, please.
The code. Now I'll share the code. Don't worry. I'll still share the code. It's the same code as that day. I'll just push it and update it on GitHub.
Okay.
So what I'll just do is I'll just update it now. I'll check out the branch. I'll just check out the branch. It's in components. So I'll just add this. All the components we created is going to go with it. So I'll just create a commit message. Do you get now? And I'll just push this. And so if I push this, it's going to ask me to.
Maiwa,
Yep.
you know we are creating components now. This is about things that we are going to different parts of this thing that we are going to have on the page, right?
Yep.
So assuming we are going to have another page, like linking to another page.
No, don't worry. Just coming to pages. Don't worry. We've not gotten there yet. I knew I said we were going to do it, but we've not gotten there. Understand these ones first before we fly to those places. Do you get started? Don't worry, we'll get there. I knew I said we'll get there, so you'll definitely get there.
Okay.
Yeah, no. So you can check the same repo. I'll link to the repo on the group. Just that same repo. What you need to do is just pull from that repo. I will merge this one. By the time you pull, you will see this new content there. You can also change things and you can push it to it. I will just merge it. If I see that it's a good stuff that we'll use for the next class. You get it. And you can also use it for your own instead of merging it back. Like you can clone it, you can play around with it, do other things you want with it. You see it now. So that's just it. So components are very interesting because it's a backbone of almost everything you will do. You can create dynamic component, you can do a lot of things, you can and all of them
we are not collaborators on the page.
Oh yeah, no, that's why I said just clone it. I don't need you to merge it because I'll see it for the next class. So I don't want to add more things to it. Yeah. This is what we'll be using until we build this thing into something big. Don't worry. This is what we'll be using.
Inshallah.
Yeah. And we'll be adding more stuff to it until it becomes big enough. We add ways you can create multiple pages, all of those things, we'll deal with it using these same components, this same project rather.
So I noticed something though.
Yeah.
When you were clicking the code, please go to your code. Is it some installation that you did or something?
No, it's normal. There's no installation. You can try from here until it will work.
Like once you click, like you are trying to import particular this, once you click on this now, it will just import it up there.
Yes, once you click it, to import it.
Up there. My
It will
own,
import
you go and import it and add it here again.
to add it where?
You need on my own part now. I mean, on my own system, I will need to import it up here first. Then I will now go to app dot this thing. Then put the whole thing there. I noticed you just click on this thing, then it's automatically imports from this up. Then yes,
Yeah, that's what I mean now. If I remove color switcher, for instance, now let me remove this. Okay, let me leave that one. Let me remove the one up here. See that there's nothing imported. If I click on it like this, two things you can do. That I do to go to quick fix. Quick fix is supposed to show it for you to import. But in case it doesn't do that, just press your control space to bring it for you.
control space.
Or,
Okay.
or you can type it fully. Once you type it, just clear one letter and type it complete. You see that it will bring it for you. If I clear this now, type R to complete it. You see that it brought it for me. So all I need to just do is click this or use my enter keyboard or from my keyboard and it will just import it again. You can see it. Do you get? So it's automatic.
So I don't need to download anything. It's
No, you don't need to download anything. I didn't download anything. I'm not sure I did. I've been using this VS Code for a while, but I don't think I downloaded anything for you to import. Import is automatic. You can download for other things, but importing files should be automatic. Yeah, it should come with
and
VS Code.
sometimes some of this code that you send to us, we always have issues with this importing. Sometimes you tell us it's not correct, then we need to start importing it by ourselves, like do it over and over before we get the correct, maybe the lettering or the cap lock or whatever.
That's why I don't type it. I just use it because importing it from this thing should fix that. So that's why I don't try importing it so that I won't make mistake from like doing normal import. So using multiple imports will help you a lot. Like you don't need to start typing it and start thinking of how to go from folder to folder. So it should work automatically for you. If it doesn't, probably go and check your like I don't know, but it's supposed to work. And I didn't download anything for it. As long as it's a React project and the extension, your VS Code, the IDE can pick that this is a React project. It's supposed to give you something like this, GSX here, right? Because you see, automatically detects the language. So I'm not the one detecting it. So once it detects it automatically, it should do all of those things for you. Do you get now?
All right.
Yeah, so that's the thing. Okay, so I think that will be all for today then. Yeah, thank you guys for joining. So any other questions, just drop the WhatsApp group. I'll try as much as possible to answer them.
Thank you very much.
Yep. Right now. See you guys next time. I'm gonna get some sleep.
Thank you.
All right. You guys take care. Bye.
Yeah,
Catch up.
bye.
Yeah.
The recording.